You ever feel like your life's a joke written by someone with a really dark sense of humor? Yeah, buckle up. 'Cause this is the story of how my dad literally pawned me off to the frickin' Mafia. So, apparently, my dad was drowning in debt and decided the smartest move was to hand me over to some sketchy gangster crew. When they came to check the goods, the boss guy stared at me, scrunched his eyebrows, and went, "Too scrawny. Gonna have to bulk her up." I was so freaked out I started sobbing and clung to his hand, blubbering, "I'm not tasty, please don't eat me." Later, my dad somehow scraped together the cash and showed up to take me back. But guess what? The boss just patted my head like I was a pet and said, "Keep your money, she's mine now." Back when I was in 5th grade, on the first day of summer break, I found my dad hanging out at some lottery sports center. He was all hyped up and told me, "Once I win, I'll take you around the world." But even as a kid, I knew gambling promises are about as real as unicorns doing taxes. And of course, right on cue, a bunch of tattooed dudes kicked down the door and stormed into our place. I just quietly slipped into the closet, like I was born to hide. Meanwhile, my dad was getting absolutely wrecked, still shouting, "Come on, guys, just lend me a bit more. I can totally win this time." Through the cracks in the closet door, I spotted the boss guy again. He looked maybe 20, had a baseball jacket on, a cigarette hanging from his lips, and straight up looked like the cold, pretty boy from some anime. He said flatly, "Sure, but what you putting up for collateral?" Cue full body dread. I didn't even get a chance to process it before my dad yanked me out of the closet and shoved me forward, like, "Take my daughter. She's obedient, low maintenance, and barely eats." I stared at him, and my soul literally screamed, "Most dads get scammed. Mine is the scam." The boss walked over, looked me up and down, frowned, and said, "Too skinny? Gotta fatten her up." And suddenly my brain decided to play every horror movie clip ever, so I burst into messy sobs and begged him again, "I'm not tasty, please don't eat me." The whole room erupted in laughter like I was doing stand-up or something. Even the boss cracked a smirk, lips curling up like he was genuinely entertained. He patted my head like I was a damn puppy and went, "Got it. I'll fatten you up first, then eat you." Yeah, that made me cry even harder. So, surprise, surprise, I got thrown into their car like a hostage in a teen drama. The boss was just scrolling on his phone. The whole ride like this was a boring Tuesday. At one point, he pulled out a cigarette and stuck it in his mouth, but then glanced over at me all curled up in fear and stuffed it back in his pocket. Right then, my stomach betrayed me with the loudest grrrl ever. I panicked and hugged my belly like I could shut it up with willpower. He side-eyed me and asked, "Hungry?" I nodded, then panicked and shook my head like crazy. He tossed me a random piece of bread and motioned, "Eat." I was starving, but my brain was like, "Nah, girl, if you eat and look chubbier, he might actually eat you." All those wild anime scenes where the pretty guy eats people. Yeah. Thanks for that mental imagery, brain. While I sat there shaking, one of the dudes in the car chuckled and said, "She's not exactly the intimidating type, huh?" He gave me a look like I was a joke. The boss didn't even flinch, just cracked his knuckles with a sharp pop pop. The guy instantly shut up and looked like he wanted to disappear. I was still frozen, scared out of my mind, brain doing zero processing. I hadn't touched the bread, so the boss finally growled, "Eat!" So I did. I tore off a piece, crying like a baby while shoving it into my mouth. Then I started choking. The boss sighed, unscrewed a water bottle, and handed it to me like, "Here, before you die on me or something." And under his breath, he mumbled, "You're seriously gonna be the death of me." The car pulled up in front of this huge house out in the suburbs. 2 tattered up guys were standing guard at the door, and as soon as they saw the boss, They bowed their heads and shouted, "Boss!" I flinched hard, curled up in the seat, absolutely refusing to get out. "Why the yelling? Keep it down." The boss nudged one of them with his foot, then turned to me and ordered, "Out." As I stepped down, one of the guys muttered, kinda shocked, "Why's the boss being so chill today?" I swallowed hard, still full of anxiety. The boss looked at me and raised an eyebrow. "Weren't you the ones saying we gotta be loud and intimidating?" The guys didn't even finish their response before they noticed me. Their expressions instantly shifted to surprise. "Where'd this kid come from? Is she, like, in elementary school?" I kept my head down, clutching my backpack, trailing behind the boss like a lost duckling. He shoved them aside and snapped, "Get out of here." Then he pointed at the tattoos on their arms. "Put on long sleeves. I don't care if it's hot." They scrambled away like their lives depended on it, and showed up again minutes later, fully covered. The boss told me to sit on the couch while he stepped outside to take a call. The sofa was way too soft, like dangerously nap-inducing, and I had to keep pinching my thigh just to stay awake. Eventually, though, I passed out anyway. I dreamed I was lying on soft clouds, with this sweet scent floating in the air. It was like stupidly comfy. When I woke up, I found myself on a giant bed in an empty room. No furniture, no decorations, just the bed. And man, after surviving on one sad piece of bread all day, my stomach was screaming. I opened the door just in time to see the boss on the phone, looking like he was about to head out. Our eyes met. He paused, ended the call, and I immediately panicked and bolted back into the room, peeking at him through the crack. Then he called out, "Kid, come here." I stood right at the doorway, totally not ready to step out. He asked, "You hungry?" I peeked at him again. He didn't look mad, so I nodded. He pulled out his phone and ordered some food. "I've got food coming. Someone will drop it off soon." Then he added, "Wait for me, okay?" I nodded like the obedient stray cat I had clearly become. Not long after, someone delivered the food. When I saw the 3 big bags in front of me, I straight up started drooling. I remembered, my mum died giving birth to me. After that, my dad spiraled into gambling. Every month, when payday hit, it was chaos. Our house turned into debt drama central. The moment he got his paycheck was always my happiest, because it meant I could finally eat like a normal person. But that joy never lasted long, since the rest of the money would go straight to gambling and disappear into thin air. I set the food on the table, thinking I'd ask the boss to eat with me. When I stepped outside, it was already pitch black. I looked around the house, trying to find him, and suddenly heard a sound behind me. I tiptoed over and got hit with a scene straight out of a movie. Under the dim lights, 5 or 6 guys were full-on brawling. The boss was going 1-on-4. And his punches? They cut through the air like wind blades, seriously looked like an anime fight sequence. My jaw straight up dropped. This was a full-on Mafia brawl, like terrifying in a, "oh crap, I might die" kind of way. My legs were frozen solid, like someone nailed them to the floor. When the fight finally ended, the boss turned and looked straight at me. I panicked and bolted like my life depended on it. But after just a few steps, I tripped and face-planted hard. My knees were on fire, but I didn't dare cry. I just tried my best to get back on my feet. All I could think was, if I saw all that, they're definitely going to silence me. I really didn't want to die. While I was still spiraling, the boss's voice snapped behind me. "Why are you running?" He marched over, towering above me, and his voice dropped low and dangerous. "Didn't I tell you not to step outside?" I was frozen in place, didn't even twitch. Then he barked, "Get up!" That cold tone made my whole body start trembling again. I fumbled like an idiot, trying to stand but failing miserably. He muttered something under his breath, clearly annoyed, then reached down and yanked me up. His eyes instantly locked onto my knee, where it was all scraped and bloody. He frowned and let out a curse, then grabbed me like a baby chick and carried me back inside. While we walked, he asked, "What were you doing outside?" I stammered, I just wanted to call you to come eat dinner." He froze. His eyes landed on the dinner table, all set up and waiting. After a long pause, he asked, "Did you bring any clothes with you?" I shook my head. He pulled out his phone and called someone to bring over some clothes. After a second, he looked at me and asked, "What size do you wear?" My eyes were still teary when I whispered, "Size 150. He shouted that into the phone and hung up right after. Then he sat down, cleared his throat, and said, "Come eat." I shuffled over, head down, and just picked at the veggies in my bowl. Suddenly, I felt this cold, heavy pressure from his direction. He frowned and said, "What? You too good for meat now? Being picky with soup?" Then he dumped a whole bunch of meat into my bowl. I hadn't had meat in forever. I really wanted to eat, but I was scared. Eventually, I bit my lip, nodded, and started eating. But I ate too fast and ended up throwing it all back up. The boss slammed his chopsticks down, pulled out his phone and asked, "What's your dad's number?" I trembled and answered, "It's just one number." Hearing that, he tossed the phone onto the table, rubbed his forehead, and looked like he was seriously holding himself back. After a moment, he asked, "So you don't like meat? What do you like then?" I rushed to explain. "I do like meat. It's been so long I forgot how to handle it." Blake reached over and ruffled my messy hair again, then took all the meat out of my bowl and set it aside. He looked kinda impatient, but his voice got noticeably gentler. "Eat what you want. Quit curling up like that. I don't eat people, okay?" I gave a small nod and whispered, "I know." He glanced at me, smirked a little, and said, "Not totally brainless, huh?" Then asked, "What's your name?" "My name's Natalie Dawson, but people call me Natty." He nodded and kept eating. I sat there thinking for a second, then figured I should probably ask his name back. It felt rude not to. "So, what's your name?" I asked, super shy. He paused for a sec, then suddenly laughed out loud. I panicked, not knowing if I just broke some unspoken mob rule or whatever. But then he pulled his expression back into serious mode and said, "Blake Carter, but don't go calling me that. That's disrespectful. Just call me sir or boss or something." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, and nodded like a good little intern at Mafia school. Right then the doorbell rang. Blake got up, answered it, and came back with a few bags. He tossed one toward me and said, "Clothes. For you." I opened the bag, and inside were the prettiest pink dresses I'd ever seen. Seriously, like something from a fairy tale. I hugged the dresses and smiled so wide it probably looked ridiculous. He looked over at me while chewing and said coldly, "What are you grinning about now?" "Thank you," I mumbled. "I've never had dresses this nice before." He paused for a half second, then kept eating and mumbled, "Dummy." Trying to reassure him, I said, "My dad'll definitely pay you back. Don't worry." He pointed at the table and said, "Eat. Kids don't need to stick their noses in grown-up business." I nodded quickly. After dinner, I got up and cleared the table without being asked. His phone kept ringing non-stop. Once I finished, I looked at the clock. It was only 8 p.m. I pulled out my summer homework, but still asked nervously, "Is it okay if I do my homework here? I won't bother you, right?" Blake suddenly hung up the phone and turned toward me. "What even are you doing?" I hesitated, then replied, I'm working on my summer homework." He raised an eyebrow. "You're doing it right here?" Then he sighed, led me back to the room, but the second he flipped the lights on, he froze, like it just hit him that the room only had a bed and nothing else. He said, Forget it. Go work in the living room instead. I sprawled out on the living room table, working through problems while he went back to taking calls. Then out of nowhere, he walked over and tapped on the table. What's this? You trying to eat your homework or what? I flinched and stuttered. This one? I don't know how to do it. He frowned, sat down, opened my notebook, and grumbled, Don't even know where to put the X? I nodded. But where do I put the X? Blake rubbed his forehead, sighed like he was this close to losing it, and muttered, Unbelievable. But he still grabbed some scratch paper, quickly wrote out the equation, and started explaining it all step by step. Honestly, his way of teaching was way clearer than any of my teachers at school. I listened, and boom, instantly got it. You're really good at this, I said genuinely. Out of nowhere, Blake raised his hand toward my head. I flinched hard, totally unsure what he was about to do next. Instinct kicked in. I dropped to my knees, covered my head, and blurted out, I'm sorry! I'm sorry! After a second, Blake yelled, What the hell are you doing? I mumbled. I thought you were going to hit me! My dad used to hit me like that. I'm used to it. Whenever he raised his hand, I'd just cover my head and drop down to apologize. If I did that, he'd usually hit me less. Blake froze. Then he slammed the chair and cursed, loud and furious. Son of a... When I see Victor Dawson, I swear I'm breaking that bastard's legs. The next morning, I got up early and went into the kitchen to fry an egg. When Blake saw me standing at the stove, he scratched his head and snapped, Why are you always doing extra stuff? Who said you could mess with my kitchen? I was about to answer, but then I noticed a huge wound on his left arm. I froze, lips shut, and quietly backed out of the kitchen without saying a word. That afternoon, a crew showed up and brought in furniture to decorate my room. Everything was pink. There were even Doraemon prints. It seriously looked like a princess room straight out of a fairy tale. I spent the whole day inside, walking in circles, touching every little thing like it might disappear. Back at home, we only had one tiny room. My dad got the bedroom, and I had to sleep out on the balcony. Having my own room had always been my biggest dream. That night when I heard Blake come home, I immediately ran out to meet him. He looked at me, gave a small nod, then asked, You hungry? I shook my head, then pointed at the injury on his left arm. I rummaged through a drawer, found a bottle of antiseptic, and nervously asked, Do you want me to put medicine on it for you? I carefully held the bottle, inching toward him gently. The wound looked pretty bad. If he didn't treat it, it might get infected. He looked at me, then held his arm out and said, Hurry up, I got stuff to do. I'll be quick, I whispered. As I dabbed the medicine, I softly blew on the cut, hoping it'd help ease the sting. This'll cool it down a bit. Shouldn't hurt too much. Blake cleared his throat and asked, Any homework you didn't get today? That night, I dreamed I had an older brother. When I was starving so bad my stomach felt glued to my spine, he'd magically make fresh bread appear. Whenever I got stuck on a problem, he'd tap my nose and call me a little dummy, but he'd still patiently help me figure it out. When my dad tried to hit me, my big brother would grab his hand and shout at him. He'd take me to the amusement park too, buy me that ice cream I'd always wanted, but never got. The amusement park was amazing. I wore Mickey Mouse ears and teased him into wearing a pair too. He looked at me helplessly, while I couldn't stop giggling like a maniac. On the way home, he kept walking right next to me, totally on guard, like I was some VIP. As we walked, he asked, Natty, are you happy? I nodded like crazy, smiling wide. You're the best! I was still smiling in the dream when I suddenly woke up. The room was pitch black. I rolled over a few times, half asleep, then wandered out the door. The living room was dim, but I could see someone on the couch, scrolling through their phone. I rubbed my eyes and called out without thinking, "Hey, big bro." Under the faint glow from the phone screen, Blake turned to look at me with a confused expression. I snapped awake instantly, about to explain that I didn't mean to call him that. I was just half dreaming or something. But he just replied casually, "Yeah? What's up?" His tone wasn't angry at all. I was so relieved I smiled and pointed at the bathroom. "Nothing. I just gotta pee." Then I darted into the bathroom. Once I finished, I headed back to bed. And just like that, my dream picked up right where it left off. The next morning, after I finished cleaning up and opened the door, this amazing smell hit me in the face. Blake walked out of the kitchen holding a glass of milk, pointed at the table, and said, "Come eat breakfast." I walked over slowly and whispered, "Hey, good morning, big bro." Blake raised an eyebrow, and the glass in his hand froze in midair for a second. Then he slammed it down in front of me. I panicked. Did I just make him mad again? I kept my head down and ate in total silence, trying not to even make a sound. After a while, he asked while chewing, "So, summer break, where do you want to go?" I looked up carefully and replied, "Would a theme park be okay?" When he didn't answer right away and seemed kinda annoyed, I bit my lip and quietly confessed, "Everyone in my class has already been to one, except me." I get jealous sometimes, but I never dared to tell my dad, 'cause if he knew, not only would he say no, he'd probably yell at me too. Blake looked at me and pointed. "That's it? That's all you want?" The next morning, he woke me up early and took me straight to a theme park. On the way there, I was bouncing in my seat, so excited I couldn't sit still. Meanwhile, Blake was driving and casually humming a tune the whole way. The moment we stepped into the park, Blake started buying me whatever I looked at. No joke, anything I glanced at, he paid for it. Before long, my bag was stuffed, and I had both arms wrapped around two gigantic stuffed animals. A group of little kids gathered around me. One of them poked at one of the plushies and looked up at me in awe. "Wow! That headband's limited edition! Who got it for you?" I looked up proudly at Blake, then turned back to the kids and said, "My big brother got it for me." Blake just smirked and didn't say a word. Another kid squealed, "You're so lucky!" Then the whole group ran off to catch up with their actual older brother. We just stood there, both quietly smiling, my heart full to the brim. I finally have a big brother too. Summer break flew by. One afternoon, I couldn't sleep, and overheard Blake talking to one of his guys out in the living room. "Boss, we still haven't found Victor Dawson." There was a pause, then the guy's voice got lower. "If we never find him, aren't we stuck raising the girl?" I stayed completely quiet, kept listening. Blake's voice was cold when he answered, "She's got nowhere else to go. If I threw her out, I'd be no different from that bastard Victor Dawson." The guy lowered his head and muttered, "Honestly, we're worse than him." "Get out!" Blake snapped. That night, I secretly called my dad, hoping to push him into paying up already. It wasn't fair. I was stuck here like a stray, while he acted like it was no big deal. When he picked up, his voice was weak and weird. "Who's this?" I asked straight up. "When are you going to pay Blake back and take me home?" He mumbled, "Just wait one more month. I'm on a hot streak. I'll win for sure." Then he hung up. I sat there on the bed, totally numb. After thinking it over, I decided to tell Blake about it. He just said, "Stay out of grown-up business." And he was right. No matter what I did, I couldn't change my dad. After that, Blake got busier and busier. One afternoon, right after lunch, I was working on homework in my room when this red-haired woman in a short dress suddenly walked in without knocking. A bit farther down the path, I saw a small store filled with Mickey Mouse ear headbands. I stared a little longer than I meant to, and right away, Blake said, "We're buying it." I panicked and shook my head hard. No, it's okay." Inside, I was stressing out. We'd already spent so much money today, and my dad still owed him a ton. With that kind of debt, I wasn't sure Dad would ever be able to pay it back. Right then, I heard the ting sound of a payment notification on his phone. Blake handed me 2 Mickey Mouse ear headbands. As I held them in my hands, I suddenly remembered the dream I had the night before. I held one out to him and said, "You should wear one too." He frowned immediately, clearly unimpressed. Why would a grown man wear this? I pressed my lips together, kind of disappointed. We walked a few steps in silence before Blake suddenly scratched his head in frustration, spun around, and tossed the headband at me. "Put it on!" I stared at him, totally confused, then tilted my head and asked, "Can I put it on for you?" "Hurry up," he barked. I panicked and quickly popped the headband on his head, then said with all the sincerity in the world, "You look really good in it. Like, really good." He shot me a side glance and waved his hand. "Go play. This place is boring." We played a ton of games that day. On the ride home, I was still buzzing with excitement, while Blake looked totally drained, slumped in his seat like he couldn't move. I stroked the soft fur of the stuffed animal in my lap, turned to him and said, "Hey, thank you. Today was the best day of my life." Blake raised a hand and smacked the top of my head. "Kid, what are you saying of your whole life and all?" I grinned and nodded like crazy, but I'll remember today forever, for real. Summer break flew by. One afternoon, I couldn't sleep and overheard Blake talking to one of his guys out in the living room. "Boss, we still haven't found Victor Dawson." There was a pause, then the guy's voice got lower. "If we never find him, aren't we stuck raising the girl?" I stayed completely quiet and kept listening. Blake's voice was cold when he answered, "She's got nowhere else to go. If I threw her out, I'd be no different from that bastard Victor Dawson." The guy lowered his head and muttered, "Honestly, we're worse than him." "Get out!" Blake snapped. That night, I secretly called my dad, hoping to push him into paying up already. It wasn't fair. I was stuck here like a stray, while he acted like it was no big deal. When he picked up, his voice was weak and weird. "Who's this?" I asked straight up. "When are you going to pay Blake back and take me home?" He mumbled, "Just wait 1 more month. I'm on a hot streak. I'll win for sure." Then he hung up. I sat there on the bed, totally numb. After thinking it over, I decided to tell Blake about it. He just said, "Stay out of grown-up business." And he was right. No matter what I did, I couldn't change my dad. After that, Blake got busier and busier. One afternoon, right after lunch, I was working on homework in my room when this red-haired woman in a short dress suddenly walked in without knocking. She was chewing on a lollipop and hopped right onto the desk I was using. Her eyes scanned the room before she tugged her dress and scoffed. "Designer? This crap? I've never heard of it." I answered softly. She looked at me. "You're Natalie Dawson, right?" As she said it, she nudged me with her foot. I nodded. "When are you leaving?" she asked. I lowered my head, stayed quiet, and didn't answer. My dad still hadn't paid his debt, so I couldn't leave. Even if I had a chance to escape, I wouldn't. If I ran, Blake would lose everything. I was just the collateral my dad left behind, a hostage waiting to be brought back. But Blake had been nothing but kind to me. I couldn't hurt him like that. "Answer me!" The redhead suddenly screamed, yanking my hair so hard my head slammed into the back of the chair. Pain shot through my skull, leaving me dizzy. I trembled and finally said the truth. "I don't want to go. I can't go." She slapped me hard across the face. "You better walk out on your own. Your dad's debt isn't going anywhere. There are plenty of ways to make him pay." Tears rolled down my face, but I couldn't get another word out. "Kids really are such a burden," she sneered. "Your dad tossed you out in a heartbeat, and here you are, clinging to Blake Carter like dead weight." She leaned in close, her voice sharp. 3 days. If you're not gone in 3 days, every time I see you, I'll kick you. Then she tossed her lollipop onto my homework and turned to leave. But the second she reached the door, she ran straight into Blake Carter. She froze, then lit up with fake joy, throwing herself at him. You're finally back. I'm starving. Take me out to eat. Please. I kept my head down, didn't dare look up. Then, slam. The door to my room shut. Next came the shouting in the living room. Get out of here, Blake roared. You're barely holding your own life together, and now you've taken on this burden too? I heard a loud crash. Something glass shattered, the sound sharp and jarring. Mind your own damn business, Blake shot back. Her voice rose again, full of venom. I am minding my business, but if you screw up this deal, I swear, if someone comes for your neck, I won't ask my dad to bail you out. You're on your own. Then the front door slammed shut. Silence fell over the apartment. A moment later, Blake pushed open my door. He stood there, jaw clenched, eyes burning. Why didn't you something? He snapped. There were tons of people out there. I lowered my head, voice barely audible. I didn't dare. I thought she was your girlfriend. And I'm just some outsider. Blake's expression shifted, a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. If you want to live in this world, grow a spine. Don't hurt people, sure, but don't let anyone walk over you either. Got it? I nodded. Got it. Blake turned to leave. I stood up, gripping the back of the chair, and asked quietly, Can you take me home? My dad probably won't pay the debt. He doesn't care if I live or die. But the money he owes you, I'll pay it back myself when I grow up. I looked at Blake with everything I had, total resolve in my eyes. He looked down at me, then unexpectedly chuckled. He reached out, ruffled my hair and said, All right, if you're going to pay it back, then fine. I'll write you a loan agreement. I tore a page out of my notebook and carefully started writing a debt contract. Halfway through, I looked up and asked, How much do I owe you? $50,000, Blake Carter replied. I said, Then I'll write it as 100,000. When I grow up, I'll pay you back double. Blake laughed out loud. That's some guts. His laughter made me smile too. I promised myself I'd study hard, get into college, and find a good job so I could repay him. One day, I realized I'd left part of my homework at home. Blake drove me back to get it. I hoped my dad would be there. It'd be less awkward for Blake, not having to babysit me. But when we got there, we found out the landlord had taken the place back. Everything, our stuff, our life, was packed up and tossed outside. I stood there under the building, completely frozen. My dad, he really left me. I had nothing left to hope for. Let's go home, Blake said, patting my head gently. As long as your dad's still breathing, he'll turn up. So I followed him back, quiet and defeated. After that, I worked even harder. I took the lead in doing every chore I could find. Blake just chuckled at my energy and ended up buying me a bunch of washing machines to help out. Every day, I buried myself in homework. I'd cry into my workbook and say, Thanks, Blake. Really, thank you. He tossed me a bag of snacks. Cut it out with the gratitude. Just eat. This summer had been so special, but not without chaos. Whenever Blake came home from work and saw mistakes in my homework, he'd make me redo the whole thing. I teased him once. You missed your calling. You should totally be a teacher. He stroked his chin and nodded proudly. You think I couldn't? I just don't feel like it. I burst out laughing. Right then, one of his guys came running in, yelling, Boss! Boss! I think school enrollment's starting. My heart jumped. I checked the calendar. It was the 20th of August. Yep. It was definitely time to register for school. So we rushed off to the campus. At the school office, The teachers asked for my enrollment documents. That's when I remembered. My household registration book was still with my dad. Without it, I couldn't finish the school registration. I started to panic, eyes turning red as I tried to explain everything to the teachers. But they really couldn't do anything to help. One of them said gently, "Bring the full documents and come back for registration." Blake Carter rubbed his forehead, clearly annoyed. "Don't worry, I'll handle it." I had no idea how he managed it, but somehow he got the household book. And just like that, I was officially registered for school. "Congratulations, Natty. You're about to become a middle schooler," the teacher said. "Thank you, sir," I beamed. I was so excited. Starting middle school meant I was halfway to being a grown-up. Blake said, "Come on, let's get you a new backpack." He walked ahead, and I happily skipped after him. He bought every single thing I needed, packed it all into the trunk of his car. As soon as he started the engine, his phone rang. On the other end, a teacher asked, "Hi, are you Natalie Dawson's older brother?" Without skipping a beat, Blake answered, "Yeah, that's me." The teacher continued, "We'll be using WhatsApp to send updates on tuition and other fees. Also, would you be available to attend the parent-teacher meeting next Monday?" Blake turned and gave me a look, like he'd never even heard the words parent-teacher meeting before. I gave a little nod, so he finally replied, "Sure, I'll be there." Feeling a little guilty, I said quietly, "You don't have to go if you don't want to. I've never had anyone show up for those before." He kept driving, but let out a quiet laugh. "I'll go. I've got time. Besides, it's a new experience. Could be fun." On the day of the meeting, Blake Carter showed up in a full suit, tie and everything, looking like he stepped out of a fashion magazine. During the meeting, he actually took notes on everything the teachers said, which made the parents around us whisper and praise non-stop. He's such a responsible older brother. Is he in college? Or maybe already working? Wait, is he married? Blake looked super awkward. He clearly wasn't used to being the center of attention like that. I stood by the classroom door, secretly giggling as I watched him awkwardly deal with all the attention. A moment later, he stepped out, tapped me on the head, and frowned. "What are you laughing at? Remember this. If you see me working this hard, you better study properly. Be at the top of your class. Or I swear, I'll break your legs." I nodded like crazy. "Yes, sir. I'll try my best. I won't let you down." Even though Blake Carter was always swamped with work, he still took time now and then to drop me off at school. A few times, my friends spotted him and couldn't hold back their reactions. "Natalie Dawson! Your brother is so hot!" I held my head up high and said with all the pride in the world, "He's just average." "Make sure you eat properly," Blake reminded me. And just like that, I started growing like crazy. My teachers seated me next to a boy who looked like he hadn't done a single thing right in months. He was always dozing off, and the first time I met him, his head was wrapped in white bandages. I tried to stay out of trouble, but the more I avoided him, the more he seemed to notice me. One day during class, as I was trying to focus, I felt a weird tingling at my scalp. I turned around and saw him holding the end of my hair, grinning like a troublemaker. I glared at him and quickly pulled my hair to the front of my chest. During our lunch break, while I was asleep at my desk, he actually took a pair of scissors and cut off a long piece of my hair. He laughed and said, "Just joking! What, can't you have a little fun?" When I saw the jagged ends of my hair, I broke down crying and ran straight to the teacher's office. They scolded him on the spot. But instead of changing, he decided to get revenge. The next time I wasn't paying attention, he took a marker and scribbled all over my school uniform. That afternoon, when I got home, Blake Carter noticed my stained uniform and messy haircut. His expression darkened. "Tomorrow, I'm taking you to school myself." His voice was cold. The next morning, he cancelled everything and insisted on bringing me to class. But not just that. He grabbed my backpack, marched straight into the classroom like a lion on a mission. He did a full walkthrough of the classroom, slowly taking everything in. Then he sat down right in my seat, his eyes locked on the boy next to me. He didn't say a single word. That kid went pale as a ghost. Suddenly, Blake stood up, tapped lightly on the boy's desk, and said coldly, "Focus on studying. Anyone thinking of causing trouble, I've got plenty of ways to deal with it." After he left, my desk mate burst into tears and apologized like crazy. From that day on, he stayed far away from me. I was thrilled. I could finally study in peace. A quiet week passed. I thought it was all over. But then, one day, while I was in the restroom, I overheard a group of girls whispering. "I heard Natalie Dawson's older brother is in the Mafia. He looks like a total wolf. Like, he could snap someone's neck without blinking." Yeah, they say her deskmate was so scared he peed himself and hasn't messed with her since. I wanted to step out and explain the truth, but the moment they saw me, the girls scattered like birds. Back in class, the teacher called me to the office. At first, they spoke kindly, but then they gave me a serious warning. "From now on, you need to behave properly. No gangster vibes in the classroom." After that, every classmate started avoiding me. No one talked to me. No one played with me. Yup, I was officially isolated, but I didn't care. Honestly, it was better that way. No distractions, just me and my books. When Blake Carter found out, he was so furious, he almost flipped the table. "Boys, handle this, and if you don't fix it, don't bother coming back." I quickly stepped in, waving my hands. No, you don't have to. I'm fine. Really. It doesn't bother me." Seeing how serious I was, Blake calmed down. His voice softened. "All right, I'll let you decide. But promise me this. If anyone bullies you again, you have to tell me." I nodded. Time flew by. One whole semester passed. Still no sign of my dad. When midterm results came out, I ranked top 5 in the entire grade. With my backpack slung over my shoulder, I stood at the school gate, buzzing with excitement to tell Blake Carter the news. But I waited and waited. No sign of his car. So I started walking home on my own. Halfway down an alley, I heard crying and spotted a small crowd gathering. It was the only way home, so I took a deep breath and pushed forward. As I got closer, I caught bits of the crowds murmuring. "Those thugs are always bad news." No, this time it's not the gangsters' fault. The ones who should be ashamed are those losers who borrow money and refuse to pay it back. They're the ones who deserve to get beat. Hearing those words from the crowd only made me more uneasy. I squeezed through the mass of people and saw a pile of junk thrown all over the ground. An old woman and a younger girl were clinging to each other, crying out for help. My eyes wandered further in. There was a man lying next to them, his face dazed and unfocused. That look, it felt disturbingly familiar. My dad used to look just like that. I sighed and was about to walk around the scene to keep moving. But right then, someone stepped out from inside the house. I looked up and froze. It was Blake Carter. His eyes landed on me, and for a second, there was a flicker of surprise. But I stayed where I was, quiet. I didn't say anything. This was his job, and I trusted that he knew exactly what he was doing. Blake glanced at me briefly, then went back to handling the situation. His expression softened. The sharp, fierce look from earlier was gone. Suddenly, a girl burst from the crowd, sobbing loudly. "Dad!" Everyone turned toward her. She had braided hair, pale skin, and clear eyes now clouded with tears. That's when I realized it was Emily Reed, the class beauty. I stood there frozen, staring in disbelief at the scene playing out before me. She grabbed the man's hand and begged through sobs, "Dad, please, stop gambling. Please. I'm begging you." The man on the ground cried as well, mumbling through his tears, "I won't gamble anymore, I swear this time." But I knew better. A gambler's promises are just air, worthless. Blake shifted slightly, his eyes turning sharp again as they landed on them. Emily Reed immediately backed away, trembling, clearly terrified. I held back, biting my tongue on the words I wanted to say. I wanted to warn Emily, to beg her to speak gently, to plead with Blake Carter, because I knew the truth. Beneath his cold, intimidating exterior, he was soft-hearted. Otherwise, he never would have taken me in, someone who was nothing but a burden to him. But before I could even finish the thought, Blake suddenly grabbed Emily Reed by the collar and lifted her clean off the ground. Blake stared coldly at her family and said, 3 days. If the debt's not paid, I've got plenty of ways to deal with you." Emily Reed was still dangling in the air, completely helpless. In a panic, she grabbed Blake's sleeve and cried, "Please, my dad can't pay. I'll pay you back when I'm older. I promise." Blake sneered, his voice icy and sharp. "Cut the crap! 3 days, not a day more." Then he let go. Emily hit the ground with a heavy thud. The whole crowd went dead silent. All you could hear was the sound of tense, heavy breathing. Even I was shaken. It was a side of Blake Carter I'd never seen before. That night, back home, I locked myself in my room to do homework, but I couldn't focus. The image of that afternoon wouldn't leave my head. I kept telling myself this was Blake's job, that the one in the wrong was Emily's dad. But another part of me, it hated the idea of scaring old women and kids just to get money back. The thought tied my brain in knots. I ended up tugging at my hair until it was a frizzy mess. Just then, Blake pushed open the door. "Dinner." I jumped, then quickly tried to smooth down my hair. "Yeah, I'm coming." At the table, Blake sat across from me, quietly eating. I took a bite, then slowly spoke. "Hey." "Yeah?" Blake replied, not even looking up. I picked my words carefully. "I was wondering, is there a way to collect debt that's not so rough?" He stared at me for a long moment, expression blank. Then he answered, short and sharp, "Number." With that, he dropped his chopsticks, stood up, and walked away without another word. One of Blake's guys came over and said softly, "Kid, you don't get it. The Two family, they're not good people." When we tried to collect before, the old lady straight up swung a metal pipe at one of us. Then he dragged another guy over and pulled up his pant leg, showing a still fresh wound. "Look at this," he said. "She smashed it right into his shin, skin peeled right off. Emily Reed's mom? She's always starting fights, scratching people, biting even. And she proudly said she wouldn't pay a dime. If you want anything, come take our lives." They don't care about the gambling addict in their house. All they care about is fighting back against people like us. The guy finished with a sigh, took a sip of water, and added, "You can't be soft with people like that. You have to be tough." Blake walked into the classroom, his gaze sweeping across every student who had insulted and bullied me. He didn't say a word, but his presence alone was enough to terrify everyone. A few students shrank back like frightened little birds, barely daring to breathe. These weaklings had the nerve to gang up on someone. Blake smirked, tossed my bag onto my desk, and gave me a gentle pat on the head. "This kid's got guts. Not bad." I bit my lip and smiled faintly as I watched his back disappear through the door. From that day on, no one dared mess with me again. Because I had a brother who, with just one look, made people think he could kill someone without blinking. And me? I wasn't someone easy to pick on anymore. Life settled into something calmer. During the monthly exam, I kept my top ranking, but trouble still found its way back. Some of the parents Blake had scared before went to the school to complain. In the office, my teacher calmly blew across the surface of his tea and said, "She's been in the top 5 every term. With grades like that, how could she be a bad kid?" Just that one line shut down all the complaints. After that rejection, no one came to the school to cause problems again. One afternoon, I came home from school and saw Blake crouching by the front door, talking on the phone. He looked up at me and motioned with his eyes. "Go do your homework." I went to my room like a good kid, but I hadn't given up. I tried calling my dad again. As expected, I still couldn't reach him. I sighed, boiled an egg, and cooked some instant noodles. Then I brought it out to share with Blake. He was sitting back on the bench, his face cold and unreadable as he spoke on the phone. But when he saw me, he immediately hung up and started walking toward me. Just then, from the shadows behind him, a flash of light glinted. In the next instant, someone lunged out of the darkness at full speed. I was so scared, I couldn't even scream. Pure instinct kicked in. I shoved Blake Carter out of the way. The knife missed him and landed squarely on my shoulder. It hurts. I clutched Blake Carter's arm, gasping, "Call an ambulance! Hurry!" "Call an ambulance!" Blake shouted, his voice full of panic. He held me tight, his whole body trembling. "What were you thinking? If I die, I die. Why would you? Why would you do this?" He screamed, then his voice cracked. His hand gently brushed my hair. "Does it hurt?" "I'm scared." I gripped his sleeve tightly, my voice shaking. "Blake, can you change jobs? Please. This work, it's too dangerous." His whole body trembled, like he was trying hard to hold himself together. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll change." I let out a soft breath of relief, but my vision began to blur. Somewhere in the distance, I could still hear him, his voice panicked, desperate. "Hey, stay with me! Are you awake? Are you okay?" My injury wasn't too serious. The doctor said it was just a surface wound. No damage to bones or tendons. Blake Carter kept pulling the doctor aside, asking the same questions again and again. He didn't stop until he was absolutely sure I was going to be okay. When I finally woke up, he was still sitting there, holding my hand tightly, fast asleep next to my bed. I shifted my arm a little, but the pain made me let out a small, "ah." Blake jolted awake instantly, dark circles under his eyes, his whole face showing how drained he was. "You're awake? Does it hurt? Do you want some painkillers?" I shook my head. "It doesn't hurt. You should rest a bit. The doctor said it's just a minor wound." Blake pressed his lips together, voice soft and low. "What if your arm had been permanently damaged? I don't care what happens to me, but you shouldn't have to suffer like that." I looked up at him and shook my head gently. "You're not worthless, Blake. You act all cold and distant, but honestly, you're the kindest person I've ever met." He looked at me seriously. There was something in his eyes. Something I couldn't quite figure out. After a few days in the hospital, I started to feel better. That morning, my dad showed up. The second he saw Blake Carter, he quickly bowed and handed him a thick envelope. "Sir, I'm here to pay the debt. Please, count it if you'd like." Blake Carter looked at him with a cold, steady glare. "So now you finally decide to show up. Even if raising a kid is a burden, at least you've got a daughter who might take care of you when you're old." My dad gave a sheepish, awkward laugh. Blake didn't even acknowledge it. He just calmly poured me a glass of water. I wanted to tell Blake to take the money because if he didn't, my dad would just gamble it away again. But suddenly, Blake spoke. Voice like ice. Take your money and go. Then he declared, emotionless and final. This child belongs to me now. Both my dad and I froze in place. My father stammered, his face pale with panic. You can't do that. I quickly turned to Blake, shaking my head. I'm still just a kid. I don't earn money. I am a burden. My dad's the one responsible for raising me. You're not. I can't let you suffer because of me. Blake went silent for a moment. Then he spoke firmly, his voice deep and serious. I've got an apartment downtown. You and the girl can live there. But if I ever catch you gambling again, I won't let you off the hook. My dad stood there, mouth wide open, unable to believe what he just heard. My chest tightened, emotions flooding me. I choked out. You don't have to do this, Blake. Everything you've done for me already, it's more than enough. Blake didn't say a word. He just gently patted my head and said, Stay out of grown-up business. Just focus on school. Then he tossed the bag of money back toward my dad and walked out of the room without looking back. Watching his back disappear, I couldn't hold back my tears. Both my dad and I owed him too much. After I was discharged from the hospital, we moved into the apartment Blake had left for us. But my dad couldn't kick his gambling habit. He kept sneaking off to underground casinos. The thing was, every time he stepped foot in one, he got thrown out immediately with a warning. If we see you again, you won't walk away. He tried different places. The outcome was always the same. Eventually, he realized he'd been blacklisted. And no matter where he went, people told him the same thing. See you again? We'll beat you again. I was furious and snapped at him. Can't you just get a real job? Something normal? He hung his head and mumbled promises. And to be fair, when he wasn't being alive by addiction, he was kind of normal. But I knew better. That was just temporary peace. Trying to quit gambling was like coming back from the dead. And whenever the craving hit him too hard, he'd run downstairs and play mahjong with the old folks. Eventually, even they stopped letting him join. One day, drunk and stumbling, he crossed the street without looking and got slammed by a passing truck. He was lucky to survive, but his leg was broken. Lying in his hospital bed, my dad held my hand and made a pained, solemn vow. Sweetheart, this time I swear I'll turn my life around. Help keep me in check, okay? It wasn't the first time. He'd said this easily over 800 times. Still, I chose to encourage him. Because deep down, I wanted to believe he could change. And if he didn't, everything Blake Carter had done for us would have meant nothing. Surprisingly, after he was discharged, my dad actually gave up gambling. He got a job as a security guard, and life between the two of us started to settle. Middle school flew by. Not the smoothest 3 years, but manageable. I scored in the top 50 on the high school entrance exams and got accepted into one of the city's top schools. On the day results came out, I ran into Emily Reed. I'd heard that her dad, thanks to gambling, had been badly beaten, his arm broken. Her family now worked 3 jobs just to pay off debts. Her grades had dropped a lot. She didn't make it into high school, barely scored enough for vocational school. Compared to her, I felt incredibly lucky. High school passed in a blur of non-stop studying. Most of my days were spent buried in homework or sitting in class. After my college entrance exams, I rushed back to the old house, desperate to find Blake Carter. But it was abandoned. Overgrown grass tangled around the front gate, and the house looked untouched for years. That summer, whenever I had free time, I'd sit across the street and stare at it. Other than that place, I had no way of finding him. One day, I was standing on the opposite sidewalk, staring at the familiar home. when I saw a figure in the distance. My heart nearly leapt out of my chest. I ran, but by the time I reached the gate, the person had vanished. Crushed, I home in silence. Later that night, I picked up my phone and sent a message to Blake's old number. Hey, I got into a university in the capital. I won't be in City A much longer. I really want to see you. Where are you? But the message never got a reply. Like a stone sinking into the sea. Maybe he wasn't using that number anymore. That summer, I retraced every place we used to go, hoping I'd see him, hoping he'd remember me, just once. But nothing came of it. Even so, I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't far away. Sometimes fate is cruel. The more you want to see someone, the harder they are to find. To celebrate my college acceptance, my dad's boss gave him a generous bonus. Beaming with pride, my dad handed part of it to me. This time I'm splurging for real, he laughed. And honestly, he had changed. That made it easier for me to feel at peace, as I got ready to leave home and start a new life. With the money in hand, I went to the mall to finally buy a model kit I'd been dreaming of for years, but could never bring myself to splurge on. I didn't expect the store to be packed wall to wall, and on top of that, the prices had been hiked up ridiculously high. With a sigh, I squeezed my way out of the crowd, and accidentally got my foot stepped on by some guy. Instead of apologizing, he barked, "Can't you watch where you're going?" I sat down by the curb, wiped my shoe off, and let out another long sigh. Suddenly, someone called my name. I looked up and saw that same guy from earlier, running toward me, clutching the model kit in both hands, face pale as a sheet. He was shaking, barely able to stand, and stammered, This is for you. I'm sorry." Then he took off running before I could say a word. A realization struck me. I jumped up and chased after him. But no matter how far or how fast I ran, he was gone. Out of breath and overwhelmed, I collapsed on the ground and started to cry. That guy, he might have had a nasty attitude at first, but something about the way he came back, terrified and apologetic, wouldn't leave my mind. Someone must have scared him, threatened him. And there's only one person on this planet who would do that. For me. Blake Carter. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I broke down in sobs. Just then, someone gently tapped my shoulder. "You still cry this easily, huh?" A deep, familiar voice. Each word sank straight into my heart. I froze, then slowly turned around. The warm summer breeze passed between us. A tall man stood beside the glass storefront, just slightly leaning against it. His eyes studied me carefully. I couldn't believe it was Blake Carter. He didn't look fierce anymore. The recklessness from before was gone. Time had chiseled away the edges and carved the shape of a man. Blake looked at me and joked, "You've grown up, huh?" I burst into tears and threw my arms around him. "Where did you go? Why didn't you say anything?" Blake smiled, gently wiping the tears from my cheeks. "Was busy changing my business. Didn't have time." We sat at a nearby cafe. That's when I learned he'd spent the past few years working and studying. He smiled and said, "You were always top of your class. I couldn't let myself fall behind." I was truly happy for him. As I sipped my milk tea, I asked, "So, did you ever get married?" Blake raised an eyebrow and shot back, "Why?" I shook my head quickly, flustered. "No reason, just curious." He took a sip of his coffee and sighed. "Married? Please. I can barely take care of myself." Hearing that, I exhaled in quiet relief. Smiling, without even realizing it. He glanced at me and scolded gently, "What are you grinning like that for?" On the first day of college, Blake Carter insisted on taking me. I didn't turn him down deep inside. I was grateful. He'd always looked after me like a true big brother. Outside the dorm, my new roommates stared at Blake with admiration in their eyes. One of them asked, "Natalie Dawson, is he your brother?" I glanced at Blake, then back at my roommate, and somehow I found myself saying, he's not my brother." Blake's expression shifted, noticeably. At lunch, he walked ahead of me, clearly annoyed. I tugged at his sleeve gently and said in a small voice, "Don't be mad. I don't want you to be my brother." "It's not that I don't like you," I added quickly. Blake turned to look at me. "Then why?" I hesitated. "I'm not ready to say yet." He sighed. "All right, as long as you're happy." But the disappointment on his face was hard to miss. I smiled and linked my arm through his. His arm tensed for a second, but then he smiled too. After that, we added each other on WhatsApp. Blake always found an excuse, some business trip, to swing by Beijing and visit me. Every time, he came bearing all kinds of snacks. He even brought enough to share with my roommates. One day, one of my roommates grabbed my hand, her eyes sparkling. "Your brother is so sweet. Any chance I could call you sister-in-law someday?" I rolled my eyes and replied, "Not a chance." She pouted and walked off in defeat. Right before Christmas, our teacher asked the class president and me to go buy gifts. He helped me carry the bags, and I smiled at him. "Thanks. Whoever ends up dating you is going to be really lucky." He scratched his head awkwardly, ears turning red. When we turned the corner, we suddenly ran into Blake Carter. He looked at me, then at the class president, his brows knitting together. The class president politely set the bags down and offered a handshake. "You're Natalie Dawson's brother, right? Nice to meet you." Blake's lips pressed into a tight line. Through clenched teeth, he muttered, "Hello." As soon as they shook hands, the class president winced, face twisted in pain, his hand trembling. Blake let go, glanced at me, and said, "Come see me when you're done." Then he turned and walked away. The class president rubbed his hand with a crooked smile. "Your brother's got quite the grip." I tried to hold back my laughter, but the corners of my mouth curled up on their own. Looks like all those daily texts I'd been sending lately were finally paying off. Once I wrapped up the shopping, I immediately called Blake and teased, "You mad?" I said it with a giggle. "No," he replied flatly. "Just focus on school. Don't waste time on silly relationships." He paused, then added, "That guy, you can tell he's weak just by looking. Not a good match." I burst out laughing, in a really good mood. Blake only grunted a few times in reply. But after that, he started visiting less, and messaging even less. On Christmas Eve, I finally decided to make the first move. I texted him, "What are you doing?" A few minutes later, he replied, "Working." I pouted into my phone and typed, "I want to go out, but I've got no one to go with." Blake texted back coolly, "What happened to all your friends?" I replied, "They've all got someone. I don't really fit in with them." I figured he'd say no, but 3 hours later, he called and said, "Come downstairs." Classic Blake, always acting tough, but with a heart like soft butter. I ran down and found him standing there. He pulled a neatly wrapped gift from his coat pocket and tossed it at me, grumbling, "So annoying. What's even the point of Christmas?" I smiled, hugging the gift tight. "I don't care about Christmas. I just wanted to spend it with you." Just then, his phone rang. He answered, and someone on the other end screamed, "Blake Carter! Where the hell did you go? We're still in the middle of the meeting." Turns out he'd gotten my message in the middle of a business meeting, dropped everything, and hopped on a flight just to see me. When he hung up, I thought to myself, so I really am more important to him than that meeting. And suddenly, My heart was pounding like crazy. Blake walked ahead, his posture straight and confident, one hand in his pocket. As we passed a little shop selling glowing headbands, memories of the past flooded back under the shimmer of Christmas lights. He still had that same rugged edge, but to me, he was still the same big brother from years ago. Stubborn, yet oddly adorable. That mix of tough words and soft heart, it was burned into my memory. I grabbed 2 glowing headbands and ran up to him. "Hey!" I called out. Blake Carter turned around, confusion in his eyes. "Sit down," I whispered. He muttered something under his breath, clearly annoyed, but still sat down without arguing. I placed the glowing headband on his head, then gave him a soft pat. "Looking good," I teased. He blushed, let out a low huff. "You little brat. No respect at all." I handed him the other headband. "Put it on me." He hesitated, fumbled with it, clearly struggling. In the end, I had to take his hand and guide it myself. The second my fingers touched his, he flinched slightly, pulling away and quickly changing the subject. "Where to next? Hurry up and tell me." I pointed at the giant Ferris wheel. "I want to ride that." For a second, maybe I imagined it. His expression tensed. Once we were inside, I found out the truth. Blake Carter was scared of heights. He kept his eyes shut the whole time, asking over and over, "Is it over yet?" I watched him. Long eyelashes, sharp brows, defined nose. The recklessness from his teenage years had faded. Now he looked refined, mature, heartbreakingly handsome. His lashes trembled slightly from fear. My heart pounded. Then, with sudden boldness, I leaned in and gave him a quick kiss on the lips. Blake's eyes snapped open, wide in shock. What are you doing? Are you crazy, Blake Carter?" I leaned in close, locking eyes with him. "I don't want you to be my brother anymore." His eyes flickered. I pressed on. "Will you be my boyfriend instead?" His face turned bright red, totally flustered. Even now, just thinking about it makes my face burn. But I knew, if I didn't say it, he'd never make the first move. "Blake Carter," I said firmly, "I want you to be my boyfriend." And as I spoke, I boldly hooked my arm around his shoulder. He was still frozen in place when I gently grabbed his face. Blake's expression slowly shifted. Then he shoved me back and shouted, That was my first kiss." I grinned, proud and unbothered. "It was mine too. Fair's fair." He glared at me. "You little brat. You're the one who came after me. So don't you ever say I chased you." But he didn't say no, which meant he liked me too. My heart felt like it was about to burst out of my chest. I nodded wildly, grinning like crazy. "I don't care what we do. You can cling to me forever." Blake Carter stared at me, jaw clenched. "Just wait till we get off this thing. See how I deal with you." As the Ferris wheel climbed to the top, his fear became more obvious. I wrapped my arms around him and gently patted his back. "Don't be scared. I'm here." Natty's not afraid, because Blake Carter is here. Meeting him that year was the greatest luck of my life, and I'll cherish that luck for the rest of my life. The Ferris wheel came to a stop. One full circle completed, but our story was just beginning.